Yeah, there are the cows. Okay, so the folder is actually syncing, which is brilliant. Um, a bicycle suit. Um, so I don't look. I don't blame you if you go away because you're not interested. But again, here is how to learn Hungarian. Uh, I don't know, 101. Nah, that would be too weird. Okay, so how to learn Hungarian in a text file. Okay, so here it goes. When you learn English, this is a fantastic way of explaining something like take the subject and start with something completely different. But anyways, so point is that when you learn English, you know you have, and you speak English. I assume that most of you watching at any given time uh, as English speakers do speak English as a second language, which means that you're aware that English has 12 tenses and crazy spelling, or even though like everybody is aware that English has the craziest spelling. So and all that sort of stuff. So really complicated grammar on a tense wise. Now Hungarian has three tenses, but we only use two: past, present. It's not that we don't use future at all, and we are completely hopeless about the future. Although trying to like when I try to watch stuff about politics in Hungary, it does seem like the future is built as bilk. What that is bilk? Bleak. Oh, whatever. Anyways, right. So for those who have joined a couple of seconds ago, we are talking about how to learn Hungarian. This is great when somebody else will eventually watch this as a video because then they will just hear things over and over and over again. It's like that I'm watching Stargate SG1 again. I've watched the whole thing at least twice already. This is the third or maybe fourth time. It's 10 seasons of stuff. And the second to last episode in the first season is a recapping whatever happened in the first season. And when you binge watch it, obviously you know exactly because you've been doing it for like a week, so you remember stuff. It was different back then in the 90s or something yeah, when it was on. Anyways, whatever. So, the point is, again, going back to the whole thing. So, how to learn Hungarian? I know it's fun to follow this little stream. Right. So, three tenses we use only two, and then what happens is that when it comes to present, um, we use that for future as well. So just add something. AKA, this is easy. This is not very complicated. You don't have to learn the 12 tenses. And what about spelling? Uh, now, once you learn the uh, the alphabet, then uh, you can actually pronounce anything. Maybe, oh, let's say 99%. So basically, what I could say is that alphabet is connected to pronunciation. And so that's cool. So these are the basics, the very basics. You don't have to be afraid of the tenses, and you don't have to uh, be afraid of the pronunciation. I mean, admittedly, we've got 44 letters in the alphabet. You do have to learn it, uh, but the thing is that you once you do that, it's fine. You're done. It's not like in English that you move to a different country, for instance, and then things, are pronounced. Things are pronounced in a very different way. Anyways, so answering your question, what books can I recommend? Any book, to be honest. So I'm not sure. Maybe I am expected to list a couple of books in this How to Learn Hungarian regarding this how to learn Hungarian question. I don't think I will do that. I mean, there is a book that I like uh, using. Let's learn Hungarian. There you go. Which I always forget the name of because it's a practical Hungarian grammar. But what is it exactly? So there you go. That's the only book. But then of course I use this book alongside teaching. Oh, it's rather small. Let me open. Oh, that's there you go. So yeah, it's kind of small. And anyways, a practical Hungarian grammar. It will not, I mean, it's very hard to learn Hungarian from a book. And of course, I guess the question is a bit about how to learn alone. And I would never go ahead and recommend things like get a teacher, because that's not something you necessarily have to do. What you have to do is be a little bit more inquisitive, I would say, and discover things on your own. One of the things that I always recommend is that you use a verbix. It's something that was created. It's great, and it actually lists all the irregular verbs. So there you go, you took care of those. You do have to learn them, just like in English when you learn the irregular verbs. We do have those as well. And then, of course, conjugations. And so what I usually recommend is this thing: create sentences. Now, obviously, you have to find a way to check those sentences, and Google Translate might not be your best friend in this case. As opposed to getting a teacher, there are lots of websites which probably I'm not that aware of because I'm not that researchy about those things, that you can find people who speak Hungarian willing to learn English and the other way around. So I think it's safe to say that you can find people that are willing to check your sentences, and that's the key. Uh, and of course, how on earth would you go ahead and create a sentence? It's not very easy, is it? But I might have given you a couple of examples, but let's try this one over here in line 13. So let's say, obviously, translation is the first kind of thing that one can do. Simple things like I eat a hamburger. Now, I think it's safe to say that when you put that was a strange thing. There you go. When you put these verbs or these words into Google Translate, they will give you something. If you put a sentence in there, I can put this whole sentence in there, and I can say that that's fine, seems fine to me, but you wouldn't know, of course. And the thing is that my suggestion is always going with your own brain, because obviously you will be expected in the end, you will be expected to speak the language. So Google Translate will not help you out all the time. Um, Going back to the sentence before we head on with the ideas, is that, let's see, what did I do? Anyways, oh yes, eat. So I believe that esik would be a correct translation. Well, yeah, I'm here. It's good to know. I know that word. So if I enter that into verbix, then I get all the tenses and all the conjugations. Because if you watched any of the videos I made, you are probably aware that there are these conjugations for verbs. They put them into person and plural or singular and all that sort of crazy stuff. Obviously, there is indefinite and definite for everything, and that's pretty hard to wrap around one's head, because definite is always, the definition is easy, it's always something in particular, that thing that you and I know about. If we don't know about it, then so in a sentence, um, I eat a hamburger, or I'm eating a hamburger. You don't know that. I know that. I'm telling you that I'm eating a hamburger, not that particular thing that you made. Luckily, English and Hungarian are very similar in that case, or in this area. Anyways, so right now, let's select something. So I realized that it's not definite, because not even here it's something in particular. So let's see indefinite. Now in this case, unfortunately, for some reason, because Hungarian is Hungarian, these two versions are the same, Eszem, Eszem. Simply because ending it with a K, somehow it was decided that it's not nice. But you don't know that, because we are testing this whole thing. So let's start with that. Obviously, there must be an equivalent to a in English, and even that can be in Google Translate or any dictionary you want. So that's fine, and I'm pretty sure that if I put this here, this will work, because the rule, if you look up any website, will be that it's the same as in English. So you put the indefinite or definite article in front of the noun. Although here I'm assuming that you watched some of the videos I made or somebody else's made, possibly even found something like what Tobias mentioned, Duolingo, which is a good way of starting out. I believe that there are other things that you could start out with and learn some words, but that comes later. So, right, and then if you put hamburger here, obviously the pronunciation will be different, but there you go, it's hamburger. And now there is one rule that either Duolingo or the book I mentioned, this holy cow, this practical Hungarian one, any grammar book, or even in my videos, I frequently refer to it, is that there is an object here, and that needs the T. So there you go, easy as pie. Of course, if you do that and you don't necessarily end up with a perfect sentence, hence the have them check part. Now, obviously, while you created a sentence in some area that you are familiar with, then you are going to learn some words. Now, one idea is that you could potentially learn all the conjugations, and again, there's a video about it, probably not one, even I did some, and even the book talks about it, so it's perfectly fine. There is information out there, And slowly you should start recognizing the pattern of, of what person, singular, plural, um, uses what kind of attachment. Obviously, this is not enough because it's not enough to actually conjugate the verb. You need to conjugate other words as well. So there is one rule that is there, and I tell everyone, all of my students, everyone that I meet, and you know, the subject comes up. It's not like I go around to people, just go outside in London and saying like, hey, you know, there is this thing. Anyways, so the rule is Hungarian solves everything relatively with conjugations or conjugating. Probably that's better. That's the rule. So even though there are all sorts of pronouns out there, here, as you see, I did not use, even though I equals in, I did not use that because, as I said before, Hungarian solves everything with conjugation, which means that it's am in this case. Right. So assuming that you created stuff, assuming that you learned the pronunciation, there isn't much there. Obviously, you must learn at some point, you must learn about all the cultural things, cultural references, what people do, how people say hi, and these are very important things, and they are often not obvious, simply because people and books can be outdated, and people always change the way they do things. And the question is, I believe at this point, did you meet many Hungarians in London? Surprisingly, I would have to say yes, because the place I live in before I complete my moving has some Hungarians, and there are some Hungarians I know in London, mainly because well, either they are my students or just I know them, but I don't. Occasionally, I hear some Hungarian on the tube. It's kind of rare, but obviously, when you speak a language, you really um, subconsciously probably pay attention to it, and so I hear that. But Hungarians never go up to talk to each other. It's not in their nature. We don't do small talk really, so it's not that. It's not a thing. You can't see Hungarians going up to that are just going up to each other and saying like, "Oh wow, this is a lovely weather today. The sun is shining. Yesterday it was almost raining. How terrible!" They don't do that. So let me look for it out. Lira. That seems alright. Libri. That's what I usually prefer, I would say. And there is an English version. Now, you can order lots of stuff here, and I'm not sure. Some is not translated, unfortunately. So, yeah. But anyways, that's what you need. And you've got loads of stuff for children. And actually, there are loads of e-books and normal books as well that you can order, and I'm pretty sure that it's something that could be beneficial for you. So let me just share this with the chat. And I believe, oh yes, this, oh here, and that would be, is it children and youth? Ah, there you go. Come on, you can do it. Right, now, you could go with, if you can read this. I mean, if you can read this, you can actually go by different age groups, but you can group them with like from babies until 3 to 6. Then there is young, not adults, but stuff, teenagers, basically 6 to 10, 10 to 14, 14 to 18. As laughable as it sounds, you could go with something really easy at first, because it's not the perfect thing to actually start learning words, because you would probably be better off if you started creating sentences that you actually want to say to people. But for fun, to sort of, a bit from a bit laid back perspective, you can go with them. One thing is that I usually prefer, when it comes to learning something new, is that I tend to go on and do the research myself, as opposed to try and buy all sorts of books. Mostly because when I started learning English and all that sort of stuff, I didn't have money to buy books. So my method was, well, if something's free, then it's good. If something's not free, then that's not gonna happen. Of course, nowadays I could go ahead and buy all the books in the history of books, at least the ones that I can actually afford, maybe 2 or 3. Anyways, but I still prefer this method, um, because yeah, and there are different things, well, translated things. Um, so there are a couple of Hungarian tales, but most of them are translated from Grimm or whoever else. I mean, stories by the Grimm brothers. I mean, loads of things are about, I'm learning something. Like, I'm learning to count. I'm learning to, there is this thing that you should wash your hand. And then, obviously, I think that you could go ahead and maybe, no, you can't preview it. It's a hardcover thing. And even though there is a discount in there, it's not that. So obviously we have the same kind of children's book that probably every country has. It's something that you go ahead and somebody learns something new, like how to tie shoes or something. Yeah. And so the next question is, that actually an interesting question, especially because it's really hard to do research in another country. since Hungary tends to, give out information in Hungarian. So to answer, the question was, does Hungary have fiber internet? And the answer is yes. One of the fastest in the region. I believe Romania is ahead of us by a tad bit. At home, I have I'm with a company called Digi, and it means that I have, it's a pretty good company, and I have 100 megabit per second downwards and 100 upwards, just because I don't want to have gigabit because it's useless. But it would be about, I mean, currently I think I'm paying about 10 euros for the internet, that internet per month. So 10 euros for 100 gigabit is not that much, I would say. Here, I only believe I pay about £30 for 50 megabit, I think. And apparently, whatever I have, it's not making my viewers happy, which is not very good. But, well, I can't complain. Maybe at the other place it will be better. Let's go back to the cows. Those cows are great. Oh, by the way, that's it might be of interest to anyone, just to go on with that question. My mobile provider gives me 6 or 7 gigabytes a month of mobile internet, and I can use that in the EU anywhere. But then again, it's expected that maybe now already, and roaming should be non-existent in the EU. But anyways, it's pretty good because I get to have some internet here. Well, yes. To follow up on that comment, Austria is indeed an expensive country in a way. But if you think about it, the average salary in Hungary is much lower. So these kind of prices tend to be just as high for Hungarians, if not higher. Generally, I think the way I try to convey the differences in currencies to people is that, in my opinion, the balance is what matters. So if you live your life in Hungary, how much can you save? What can you afford? Like what type of summer holiday or what type of whatever. And if you are an average person in Hungary, you can afford a summer holiday to the nearby Lake Balaton, which is great. Oh, maybe Bulgaria is cheap, I think. But then you have to go by plane, and then even though we have these discount things like these discount airlines, still, it's much more affordable nowadays, but it's not that great. On the other hand, if you're an average person here in the UK, for instance, or I assume in Austria or Germany, you could afford a tad bit more. That's what usually the case is. I'm not going to calculate it at the moment. I've calculated it numerous times, and as probably as the final nail in the coffin of any argument, I'm here in the UK, not in Hungary. There must be a reason for that, and it's not the food. Although I have to admit that the whole food argument is, I do love the food here. Just saying. It's my weird thing. Still, I'm not here because of the food. Just saying. But Yeah. Oh well, going on holiday. Yeah. I'm going back to Russia pretty soon. Because I think it's a fun country. As in like visiting nice buildings, lots of stuff. And in this time, I aim to go out of Moscow and drive to some places because people have this idea about Russia that everybody, maybe there's like five people who are rich and then everybody is suffering and dying and all that sort of stuff and poor as dirt, which I have yet to discover. I mean, I've never seen anyone being like most people being poor in Moscow. That's not simply not true. As this is something like saying most people are poor in Hungary, which is a bit true, but we'll see. We'll see, I guess. So I'm going to Nizhny Novgorod actually, uh, just as a fun uh, road trip in the middle of the this whole travel thing, and then later on I'm probably going to New Orleans in the U.S. Um, not doing it as a contrast to Russia. It just happened that I have to be there. It's partly business, partly fun. One part, well, I would say like one part business, 5 part fun. That's what I would say. That's the current plan. But I can't even promise that I will make any videos about it. I mean, I do have the footage, I just don't have the time to do things with it. But then again, that might change in the future. Um, and Another question would refer to the Star City, as in Baikonur, in Kazakhstan, the whole thing with the space stuff. Sure, probably. I mean, Kazakhstan is a country that is. I'm slowly making my way towards east, if you will. First Russia, then conquer the whole planet. Well, I mean, when it comes to holiday traveling, I guess. Um, but compared to Russian, as I'm not saying I'm really trying to learn Russian. If I tried, it would probably be a bit easier, or there would be some progress. But it's a very complicated language because you have to learn a new alphabet. And in Hungarian, the alphabet is 40 consists of 44 letters, and most of that you already have in English, and then you just have to put some accent marks here and there you go. But Russian has the Cyrillic alphabet, and I've been learning it on and off a couple of hours, here and there every month, and still I am having a struggle with the whole reading part. So I have not. I mean, I would say that it's more or less the here. I would say that the alphabet should be the first when it comes to Russian, and then of course how to speak and then figure out what else is there. But until I get past the alphabet, uh, sorry, I was actually trying to list this. Um, so would go with the alphabet first, which I am doing, and then some tenses and use whatever means necessary. But the problem is that I'm not past that the alphabet part. So sure, I'm pretty sure that you can pass it, and one can go through the whole alphabet in a matter of maybe, I don't know, 10 hours, 20 at best, with the worst. I mean, but still, it's it's not that easy. So I believe Russian is maybe a tiny bit more forgiving than Hungarian when it comes to pronunciation, because pronouncing stuff in Hungary, if you don't do that properly, then you might end up with a very similar sounding but an entirely different word. So it's not easy. Right. So that region for suggested by Tobias. And well, the thing is that, well, that would be the region where Hungarians originally come from, kind of. I mean, assuming that this is the Ural um, mountain range. But yeah, it's something that that would be very, very interesting to do as a project. I'm only going. So at this point, oh, where is Moscow? I'm only going this far, so that is a little bit further away inside Russia, and that is something that I believe when you go to a country, it's much harder if you don't speak the local language, and I'm not sure how much English they speak as I go further into Russia. In Hungary, that would be very little, but Russia is insanely big, so that's yet to be seen. I might just learn Russian until then, at least some Russian that allows me to survive thing. Of course, according to the theory, uh, the tribe of Magyar came, or well, actually, the tribe of Ugor um, that later on split to one of the tribes for Hungarian, uh, along with the Finn tribes, the Finnish tribes, they come from that part of the country. And the thing is that I don't know, and I can only have my personal opinion on the subject, but I believe that the behavior is kind of similar to Russians. We could get along, and also none of the other places, let me switch screens, none of these other countries are similar to Hungary. It's not like our language can be understood by Polish people or Romanian people. It's insanely different. But it's not like our language can be understood in Finland, because even though we do have similar words, even with the, to the letter, the meaning is completely different. So, and then the structure of a sentence is absolutely like, you know, day and night. So, yeah. All right, so as I was saying, I have to go. And thank you very much for watching, as always. And I hope that I could keep this kind of thing up a bit better than lately, because lately it's been a little bit erratic. So thank you for coming by, and see you a bit later. I will upload this as a video uh, a bit in a bit more edited and more compact form um, in the next couple of days, hopefully. So have a great day.